Hello. Today I will be featuring the Tier 8 IJN Destroyer, the Kagero. Now, what you might notice first of all is that I'm running the Torpedo reload booster instead of the smoke. And I'm up against, well, Tier 10 matchmaking. Well, not too many Tier 10s, but the usual T8 to T10 matchmaking that you kinda tend to run into quite often as a Tier 8 ship. I mean, it seems occasionally balanced, but some days it just feels like every single day or every single game you end up against Tier 10s. But overall, it doesn't really matter that much to the Kagero, because the Kagero is incredibly stealthy. Just like the old Kagero used to be, the new Kagero is very stealthy. I think you can get, is it 5.4 or 5.5 km concealment? I think it might be 5.4. And regardless, compared to things like the Benson and other Shimakazes and such that sit around 5.8, or something like the Z52 that sits around 6.1, you usually have a spotting advantage. It's not a large one, but it is a small advantage. And especially if you combine that with RPF, well, it's very hard for anyone really to spot you, unless of course there's carriers around, or you sail into a fighter/spotter plane. Those are of course things that, but those occur to all DDs. Now, I played some Kagero games with the smoke, and honestly, it worked pretty well. It's just that it was pretty boring. I found it pretty boring because of the torpedo reload is fairly long, and you only really have 8 torps. So sitting around waiting, like, I mean, yeah, you could put some gunpowder in there, but ultimately you only have 6 guns with a fairly long reload. Your gunpowder is okay, but it's not Yuguma guns, and it got kind of boring. So I started switching around the consumable, giving up smoke for the torpedo reload. Now it's clearly less team-oriented, just like putting heal on your Russian DD, it's less team-oriented when you don't run the smoke. But damn, it's a lot of fun. I've been having so much fun just playing with this additional torpedo reload. Let's see, we have multiple battleships pushing this way. It might be something closer as well, since my RPF is pointing that way. I throw in both my torp volleys, and then I use my torpedo reload booster. Unlike the Shiratsuyu reload booster, that reloads your torps in 5 seconds, this one reduces the cooldown from 30 seconds. So ultimately, to get the most value out of this consumable, you should obviously use it right after you have launched your torps, because that's when you get, well, it gives the biggest benefit then. If you use it when you have, let's say, 40-50 seconds left on your consumable, well, then you're kind of wasting it. I mean, you might as well wait the additional 20 seconds you have to wait regardless. So it's not worth wasting it. Spot the Ognevoi, you see, only when he gets to 5.4 does he actually spot me, but I was easily able to outspot him, calling target on him for my team, hoping they will focus him. 2 volleys of torps heading out. Highly likely the Bismarck is running Hydro and they will be able to dodge them, but when you see that many battleships, it's still worth throwing both your torps in there, or both volleys, because, well, 3 battleships, you might land 1 or 2, even if they happen to be running Hydro. If they're not, well, then even more likely you'll land 1 or 2. Let's see. Oh, looks like 0 hits from those torps, unless I hit the guy behind them. But the biggest problem now is the Ognevoi. He does seem to want to chase me, but I am far enough away from his buddies here that his buddies will have a hard time fighting me. So I'll just happily return fire. The Ognevoi is, honestly, it doesn't really pack much of a punch. Yes, it's a bit of a hybrid boat, but it's a really bad hybrid boat. Unlike the Benson, who can deal a lot of DPS, the Ognevoi with its dual turrets and only 4 guns, it doesn't really deal a lot of damage. And you can see I dealt 7.2k damage to him there, and in return I took something like 6k, and he was the one who opened up on me, and he even used his smoke and all of this, and I'm just running away. I mean, he can smoke up, he can waste his time, I'm just straight up fleeing. I'm not interested in taking that fight, it's him who wants to fight me. Regardless though, my torps have soon reloaded, and no doubt the Hydro has run out by now from this Bismarck. So they are all in a division, they're all clanmates as well, so I can assume the Bismarck was running Hydro and protecting his buddies. But now that the Hydro have run out, well, now my torps should have a significantly higher chance of landing. Let's see, I really want to torp this Alabama. I just need to turn in a bit more to be able to get the optimal angle on him. The torps are 10 km, which is pretty decent. I mean, compared, if they feel great compared to the Yugomo's 8km torps, which are, well, I have had issues getting those to work, just like I've had issues with Shimakaze's F3s. There's too much hydro radar, planes, all sorts of stuff at high tier to really make those 8km torps work that well. So I've been a bit skeptical with those. These 10km torps though, I've found them fairly reliable. I mean, it might take you some time to get the torps to land. I mean, we're 6 minutes into the game, I haven't landed a single torpedo yet, but you kind of just have to have patience, and you have to keep launching torp after torp, preferably every single cooldown, because ultimately the torps are still your bread and butter damage, so try to get them off every cooldown. And finally, I'm rewarded. I land 3 torps, pretty much destroyed at Alabama. Yes, the Alabama has a great torpedo belt, but that doesn't save him from all the flooding and all the additional damage. So a good 40k plus damage to him, and that division they had collapses soon after, which is pretty damn good. The Izuma is a very tempting target, but I should or do suspect that the Ognevoi is also around here. Trying to turn my guns, I want to get a better angle on him. And of course that's when the Ognevoi pops up. This is a bit awkward here because, well, my guns are pointed the wrong way. Still though, I'm not really that interested in the Ognevoi. I'm torping the Izuma, that's reversing, and only now do I turn and focus the Ognevoi. Once again, Ognevoi, I don't consider it a big threat. In fact, when they buffed the Ognevoi from tier 6 to tier 8, they obviously, in my opinion, didn't buff it enough, because the gun power, the reload isn't nearly enough to compensate for how few guns it has. And now when I'm half HP and RPF is starting to, AR is starting to kick in, and my reload and DPS goes up even further, well, it's kind of easy to really shit on the Ognevoi in a Kagero. It's just not a scary fight for me at all. In general, the Kagero is still pretty damn good at fighting a lot of other DDs. Now, you don't want to, of course, be charging into them, but when you're kiting away from them, like I was doing there, when you're fleeing from the enemy and shooting backwards, the Kagero's guns are great, and you can deal, well, 3k per volley pretty easily. So people underestimate the gun power of the Kagero, I think, and even though I understand why they're hesitant to shoot, especially if they run this build where they don't run any smoke, I understand being hesitant to shoot because other people can open up on you, but if you're in a straight up 1 versus 1 like I was there, don't underestimate your own firepower. The Kagero can really tear apart, especially when the enemy DDs get too cocky and start chasing you. That's when you can really open up and just melt them. And the Kagero's concealment does allow you to usually dictate when and where you will open fire. I mean, you can get unlucky like I did there, or well, not really unlucky, I kind of knew it might happen, but once again, Ognevoi not a big threat. If there had been something like a Gearing there, or a Fletcher, then I would have, of course, played significantly safer, and I wouldn't have taken the risk of possibly running into him, but I would have been paying a lot more attention to my RPF and avoiding him that way. Regardless though, he's dead, that problem is solved, and Alabama is clearly the closest target. Gonna see if I can get some torps on him. He's trying to reverse away, because now when all these battleships have died from this side, it's obvious that my team is going to start pushing hard on this flank. Well, I killed the Alabama and I killed the Izumo. Well, I didn't get the killing blow, I think, on the Alabama, but I did a ton of damage to him, which pretty much stopped the push. Dropping some torps on the Alabama, letting my teammate know also that I am dropping these torps. Always be a bit careful when you drop torps like this, because if the torps hadn't been my division mate, I probably would have been very skeptical about dropping these torps, because they would have intercepted my own teammate and you could easily get a team kill. In general, when you see two battleships brawling, you have to be real careful about torping into them. I often see DDs who are very kill hungry and damage hungry, and they just blindly torp into two battleships brawling, and you're just as likely as hitting your teammate as you are at hitting the enemy BB. So if this hadn't been a clanmate, an Omni clanmate, I would never have dropped his torps in there. Still though, since it was, he knew they were coming, so he just slowed down and allowed them to pass by and kill off the Alabama. We have an enemy Prince Eugen in the enemy base. Would you guys want to see a Prince Eugen commentary, by the way? Prince Eugen / Hipper. I mean, I don't particularly like that ship, but I haven't featured it in a long time. So let me know in the comments if you guys want an Eugen commentary as well. I know people are wanting a Rune commentary, but I'm kind of waiting to see with the patches and stuff how they hit before I move on to that part. Still though, pushing into the enemy base at this point, they still have at least one DD up there, and it is a gearing. I kind of would love to see the gearing get spotted, because the last time the gearing was spotted was ages ago, and that was in their base. So that gearing could literally be anywhere. And when I'm at 5.6k, running into a gearing is a good way to get killed. However, I have a lot of backup here, and my RPF really hasn't moved from the Eugen at all. So I'm pretty confident that I'm not about to run into the gearing. But always keep in mind what DDs are left. And you keep in mind if your RPF suddenly changes target, like if it would suddenly tick to the right or left even though the Eugen is right in front of me, well, that would let me know real fast that there's something else coming this way. Still have 2 torpedo reload consumables available. Some games you don't really find the most optimal point to use them, like right now it feels like kind of a waste to use it because I don't really know if I'll get any good opportunities. And some games, well, sometimes you want to use them instantly. Like for example, when you saw those multiple battleships, even though I didn't hit any of the torps because Bismarck was running Hydra most likely, it was still a good time to use it. It was a good example of when to use it. When you have a lot of potential targets and you really want to get as many torps into the ocean as possible, that's when it's a great time to use the consumable. This Montana looks like he's grounding on the left there, which once again, this would be a tempting time to use the consumable, but there's absolutely no point in doing it because it only reduces the cooldown to 30 seconds, and since my torpedo reload is now 30 seconds, it would actually give me no benefit at all. Torps run out before reaching the Eugen, and the Montana is about to ground. Slowing down, I don't want to get spotted by the Eugen. Also got to keep in mind any possible spotter planes and fighter planes. Keep in mind, don't get as close as your own spotting range to enemy battleships or cruisers, because pretty much everyone has some sort of plane these days. So you got to keep that in mind, especially if you haven't seen it yet, so you don't know where it's patrolling. Now the Kagero does have a really small aerial spotting range, but it's still something to keep in mind. This time, once again, I instantly popped the torpedo reload because he's grounded and I don't really know which way he's going. Well, it looks like he's grounding. I'm not certain if he is. Is he gonna ground? He did ground. Still, I want to get a better angle to torp him from, so I'm glad I popped the consumable. He should have to reverse at this point to get out of this position. And this is of course an optimal torpedo range or torpedo position for me. Tashkent behind me is also torping, but I'm pretty sure my torps are faster than his. Am I gonna land any torps? I do land 1 torp, which wasn't bad. Is he flooding? Yeah, he is flooding, so he didn't have repair, and I already have my second volley of torps on the way, so he should have no chance whatsoever of dodging these torpedoes. And it's in kind of like when it comes to punishing battleships that mess up, especially, I find the torpedo reload is so good because, well, within 30 seconds you can have torps available again, and they should kill him. And 3 torpedoes, and he gets killed. At this point there's just the gearing and the rune left, but the gearing was spotted sailing around somewhere on the west side of the map. I have no idea what he's doing there, but he was spotted over there. And well, I kind of want to torp the rune, but he's sailing away from me, which makes it almost impossible to land any hits on him, and that's a bit of a shame. I do kind of want to kill him though, because that would secure my Kraken. I'm gonna see if I could I'm gonna wait until some big hits, see if I could go for the classic kill steal here, just for the sake of the Kraken, since I am making a commentary. Is he gonna... he still has too much HP, not worth opening fire yet. Oh, that's a good chunk, and his guns are aimed elsewhere. Time to open up fire, see if we could maybe get a fire or some sort of big hits on him. Oh, rune torps, and I do not get a kill. And in fact, the rune's last volley was aimed at me, so it doesn't reset the cap. The gearing keeps sailing away at this point, so there's not really much to see. He just flees from us. I don't really understand why, since once again there's not really any credits to be saved. But the game ends with the cap out, and well, I was once again running the flags you get from the Bismarck, or well, got, since the Bismarck mission has now ended on NA. I think it's ending on EU as well. But this is what happens when you combine all the flags at once. 14k XP, 11k free XP, 183k damage, which is pretty okay. I mean, not the most amazing game, but not a bad game either. And looking at the team score, well, not surprisingly going to top the score with all the damage, and my division mate follows up right after. And looking at the detailed report, well, Kagero is very much a torpedo boat. Almost purely torp damage, very, very little gun damage. You can sometimes get more, but on the other hand, what you lose in gun damage, since you don't have smoke, you kind of gain in spotting damage. In fact, look at my damage upon spotting, 83,000. Since you're never really smoking up with this build, you get a ton of spotting damage for your team. You help them a lot in that way. You also, you're not vulnerable to torpedoes because, well, you're unlikely to get torped ever since you're constantly moving. And radars aren't that big of a deal because, once again, you're not really stopping in any smokes. So even though there are downsides of not having smokes, there are also upsides, especially with how heavy the radar meta is these days. However, I must mention that carrier planes are a huge issue. If someone hovers a plane above you all the time, it's very frustrating when you don't have a smoke and you pretty much have to sail to a friendly to make them get the hell out of there because your own AA will not be nearly enough. Looking at the credits and XP, of course, almost 41.5k Captain XP as well, on top of the 11k free XP. So a very rewarding game. Anyway, I can show you the build I'm using, even though it is my usual IJN DD build. Alright, starting off, we of course have the modules. Now, the torps are pretty much a straight up upgrade. I mean, these lower tier ones have faster reload, or not lower tier ones, but the stock ones have faster reload, but you gain both speed and maximum damage from upgrading the torps to the Type 93 Mod 2 ones. Worth noting is though that the stock torps have better concealment, which is not surprising. The slower the torps are, the better their concealment, but ultimately I do highly recommend getting the upgrade. So get the hull first, because it gives you, well, a lot of buffs. Follow it up with the torpedo upgrade, and finally get the range, because the default range of 8.6 is very, very anemic, and considering how good the firing arcs are, only having 8.6 km range is pretty much a waste. Consumable wise, premium damage control, but honestly if you run torpedo reload like I do, then run it premium. Smoke isn't bad either, run it premium if you intend to run this one. And finally speed boost. Upgrade wise, main armaments mod 1, main aiming systems mod 1, and here if you have a speed boost module, it's very much worth using. Mine is in use right now, I think, on the Yugomo though, so I don't have it available for my Kagero, since I've already moved my captain and stuff to the Yugomo, since that's the next IJN DD that I will be covering. I also run the acceleration, aka propulsion module, since the rudder shift is so fantastic on this that you don't need the steering gears mod at all. Finally, of course, concealment, because, well, what's the point of playing these super stealthy IJN DDs if you are not running the concealment build? Yugomo, my captain is on Yugomo, so I'll have to dig it out here. And captain perks, the first one is absolutely preventive maintenance, follow it up by last stand, follow that up with additional health, and then get concealment. That's the first 10 points. Once you have that covered, then you go AR, torpedo reload, and finally with the last 4 points, RPF. And RPF is a really useful tool for, well, all IJN DDs. You've probably seen a lot of commentaries with me featuring this one, and this is, you should recognize this captain because, well, if I move over, where's my Shimakaze? This is exactly the same captain that I use on the Shimakaze. So this is pretty much the same captain that I prefer using on almost all my IJN DDs, because this captain scales great. This works just as fine on a Umikaze as it does on the Shimakaze. All of these perks are stuff you will and want to have on an IJN DD. Anyway, that was my Kagero commentary. I hope you guys enjoyed it.